The first adab mentioned today is وَجَنَّبُوا طَعَامَ أَهْلِ الظُّلْمِ وَالْبَغْيِ وَالْفَسَادِ خَوْفَ الْإِثْمِ. That they would stay away from the food of the oppressors and the people who are into unlawful matters. They deal with unlawful matters because they are worried to fall into sin. Of course, in Islam, if someone offers you food that is halal, you don't have to ask where it's from, and it's not compulsory to not eat the food that might possibly be haram. But what the scholars have agreed upon in books of tazkiyah is that if you eat from food that is originally haram, even if it's not compulsory for you to ask if it's halal or haram, so something turns out to be haram, that will still have an effect on you. So whatever is haram immediately has an effect on you, and the effect of haram is usually that it leads you towards haram. It leads you towards sins. It leads you towards bad, or it basically leads you towards bad because it allows the evil side of you to grow. So it feeds the evil side of your nafs. And when that side grows, what happens? It leads you towards haram. So not the food itself is not what leads you to haram, but it feeds the evil side of you, subhanAllah. And good food feeds the good side of you. So they were scared to fall into sins. And the only way to stay away from sins is to make sure the food is clearly haram. So this teaches us that not only what we eat is important, but who we eat from. Prophet ﷺ says, "لا يأكل طعامك إلا تقي." Don't let anyone eat your food unless they are pious. So even at home, you shouldn't invite just anyone randomly to eat. You should feed everyone. But when you invite someone into your home and the intimate food that you're eating from, you should only give that to people who are fearful of Allah Ta'ala, people who have good intentions. If that's the case when you invite someone to food, so imagine eating from someone else. So you are now the one who is vulnerable. You're the one receiving. You're the one who basically could be affected. You're surrendering to the mercy of this person. You should be even more careful of who you are vulnerable with, who you let your guard down with. And the most apparent guard that people let down is when you eat with someone, subhanAllah. When you eat, you're literally putting food into your mouth, chewing it from that person and swallowing it, subhanAllah, and enjoying that and showing them how you enjoy taste. It's very, subhanAllah, vulnerable. So you should only do this with people who you trust. Who you trust them spiritually, you trust them religiously as well. بل أكلوا مما استبانوا حله غير الذي لا يعرفون أصله. They would eat and they wouldn't have an issue eating from what is clearly haram, but they would stay away from what they don't know if it's halal or haram. And in our last class we mentioned the story of some of the pious students of one of the awliya who basically were invited by a sultan to eat food, and the different approaches they had to that food, and we explained how this general ruling can differ from person to person, state to state, but generally the general ruling is that you should be aware of who you eat from. Now, of course, in books of tasawwuf, they always, we speak about this many times, they always talk about the dangers of eating haram, the dangers of eating doubtful food, or the food that's mixed between halal and haram, and the benefits of eating halal food. That's why, in some cases, the scholars, if they found food that's clearly halal, so you're 100% comfortable with its income, they would even eat more than they would eat from other foods. So they would fill up from that, so they don't have to eat anything else. That's the famous story narrated that Imam Ahmad radiallahu anh, when he was invited by Imam Shafi'i to eat at his house, he kept on eating, or Imam Shafi'i was invited by Imam Ahmad, to eat food. He kept on eating a lot of the food until he was full, and he spent time enjoying that with Imam Ahmad, because he says not only Imam Ahmad is pious, but actually whatever you eat from him will actually be a cure to you, inshallah ta'ala. So, alhamdulillah, that's also an example of some stories we hear from the Sahaba, where they ate and they ate until they were full, until their stomachs were, 100%. What the case was that in that case, there was a good effect in the food. They knew that food was like a dawa, it was like medicine to them, subhanAllah. It could be when the Prophet ﷺ, for example, Sayyidina Abu Hurairah, he was with the Prophet ﷺ in Sahih Muslim. He says, I used to stay day to day with the Prophet ﷺ just so I could eat. I was always hungry, I had no one to feed me, so I would spend time with the Prophet ﷺ so I could eat. My intention, of course, was to be with the Prophet ﷺ, but I would use that also to my advantage, that I would be able to eat something, because if I didn't eat, I would die. I was that poor, he says. And the Prophet ﷺ would take Sayyidina Abu Hurairah with him around Medina, and whenever he had a chance, he would give him something to eat. And the Prophet ﷺ was sitting there with Abu Hurairah, and then he was gifted, either some type of milk, heavy fat milk that was filling. So Sayyidina Abu Hurairah was with him. He said, Abu Hurairah, go to the people of Sufa at the back of the masjid and feed them first. And the people of Sufa were a large number. He had to feed them one by one. Once they all were full of drinking, he said to Abu Hurairah, now it's your chance to drink. He said, I drank. He said, drink again. He drank. He said, drink again. He said, I couldn't drink anymore. I was so full. I was bloated, he said. Okay, and then the Prophet ﷺ only drank after everyone else. So in this case, he was bloated. Isn't that wrong to be bloated? So in some cases, if you're 100% sure, and if it's actually an advice from the Prophet ﷺ of something spiritual, then actually the food might be a medicine for you. But generally, we eat from places that we are comfortable that it's inshallah ta'ala from a halal source and halal food. And also, if we have, if the comfort, the feeling that we have in our heart is less, also that should affect the amount that we eat as well. So, subhanAllah, you only eat according to the state that you're in. He then goes on to talking about another adab, which is talking while eating.
قال رحمه الله تعالى ولم يكونوا كرهوا الكلام عليه لكن كرهوا الإرغام ويكرهون الأكل مرتين إذ في اليوم والمرة في اليومين. They do not dislike speaking around it, but they dislike coercion. They dislike eating twice a day and once every 2 days.
One of the things that misconception people have is that you have to be in a state of sukoon and khushu' all the time. You can't. You should know when to be quiet, when to be humble, and when to also speak and be encouraging and be inviting to people and make them also comfortable. Sometimes people, subhanAllah, they feel shy in some cases. You're supposed to make them feel comfortable. One of these cases is when people come to eat food. If you invite someone to food in their house, usually they're held back, they're embarrassed, they're not sure what to eat. They feel like, okay, this is a lot of food. I'll just take a little bit. So they need you to break that ice, basically. Okay, that's why he said one of the misunderstandings that people have is that you don't talk when you're eating. You eat quietly, with khushu' and just eat. That's not good, especially when other people. You're supposed to eat in a group, yeah. When other people are there, you're going to want to actually encourage them and be open to them. So it's not disliked to speak while eating. It's actually encouraged. It says, وَلَكِنْ كَرِهُ الْإِرْغَامَ. But one thing they actually disliked is to force feed people. Encourage, be very kind. But there's a fine line between kindness and between what some cultures do, which is force feeding. Okay, where a person can be in a situation they don't want to eat, and they might not enjoy their food, or they're full, and you force them to eat in a way that makes them uncomfortable, and that they hate, and that they're going to suffer from later on. That's not generosity, yeah? So, subhanAllah, be generous means you offer them everything you have, no problem, okay? And you encourage them by what? Not by force feeding. Sometimes they're embarrassed and you're force feeding at the same time. That's not good. That's not adab, yeah? You haven't broken the ice, you haven't made them comfortable, you don't know how to do that, all you know to do is just throw food in their face. That's not nice. Yeah? But what's nice is when you make it so normal and so casual that the person's comfortable 100%, and then you eat with them and you offer them. And subhanAllah, when you feel like they also feel at home, they'll eat whatever they want to. That's how to be generous, by making them feel at home. Generosity in Islam is making a person feel at home. That's why, subhanAllah, how the person feels is the most important aspect you should take care of when you want to take care of someone. Not what you physically do for them. I gave you $1 million, I'm kind to you, khalas. Maybe the person doesn't want that from you, they want a connection. Some people, when they're married, they give their wife lots of money. I gave her so much money, why isn't she happy? There's something else that you need. Yeah? Take care of the need they need from you. Yes, and understand the person. This is the most important thing. Take care of the need that the person wants from you. Same thing when you have a guest at home. If they came to eat, you invited them to eat, then they need to feel at home. They need to feel comfortable. They need to feel like there's no barriers and no one's watching them when they're eating, looking at them. Yeah, as they're eating. That's wrong, yes. So you should basically be making sure that the situation is very peaceful, comfortable, and that they, no one's going to even ask or look at what they're eating. Just don't even look at, them and focus on them. It's very, very, subhanAllah, it's encouraging. Now, so he says, لم يكونوا كرهوا الكلام. So, subhanAllah, these details are very important, even though they're minor details, but it shows you that they don't only take care of adab, but they understand the wisdom behind being generous in Islam, which is to make a person comfortable. This is a soul that you're dealing with, a soul of another human being. You should respect that. Respect their needs and their wishes. Okay, and that's one thing that if you just follow culture and you forget about Islam, the teachings, you'll get it wrong. You try to be kind, but in your own way, and you might turn people off. SubhanAllah. So that's one example. Now, Um, he then says, وكره الأكل مرتين في اليوم والمرة في اليومين. How many times should we eat a day? Also, this is something people sort of care about. Why? Because, subhanAllah, when we understand these adab, and we understand the priorities, and we understand the best things to do, whether we do them all or not, or we continue to struggle and try the best to practice these things, we inshallah ta'ala can be the closest we should be to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How many times should we eat a day? Mankind differs in this still today, subhanAllah. Some people they eat once every 24 hours. Some people they fast for a whole week. And some people, subhanAllah, they fast, like Ramadan, they fast the whole day, they eat at night. And they have 2 meals at night. And some people, subhanAllah, they eat 4, 5, 6 meals a day. They're just always eating. What's the sunnah? If you have a special circumstance, it's fine. But what is the sunnah? What's the best thing to do? The best thing to do is that we should eat in a moderate way, and also in a moderate amount of times, meaning that we shouldn't always have food in our stomach. Having your stomach full of food all the time is disliked. Why? Because if your stomach is always digesting food and has food in it, it's impossible that you'll be able to have full focus on other things. When your stomach is empty, emptiness in the stomach creates clarity in the mind. And that's one of the things people find when they fast and stuff, they get clarity, all of a sudden they're focused. Why? Because the stomach's empty. It's not because fasting does that to you, but it's because, subhanAllah, your body is able to focus on other things. So food should be medicine. It should be done at certain times, but there should be periods between these meals that you don't eat in. And you should learn how to get your body used to eating and feeding. You should fuel your body with food, not just continue to eat all the time and then go and spend your time doing other things. Because of this, the advice they give is that a person shouldn't eat more than twice a day. A day for the Sufiya means from Fajr until Maghrib. From Fajr until Maghrib. So if you're not fasting, from Fajr to Maghrib, you should have no more than 2 meals, which would be breakfast and lunch, for example, or breakfast and dinner. So, and throughout the day, from Fajr to Maghrib, a person shouldn't eat more than twice. And if you eat once and it's enough for you, that's fine, it's sufficient, and it might be better for some people. But to eat at least no more than twice is better. To eat 3 times, they consider that to be too much usually for most people. If there's a special circumstance, it's fine, but for most people, 3 times is too much because, subhanAllah, your body needs time to digest and to also focus on other things. Now, old books of medicine, like books of Ibn Sina and others, they mention that this is beneficial for a person as well. SubhanAllah, like books of medicine back in those days used to mention that this is the medical advice at that time, to eat twice in the daytime. So Ibn Sina has even Ibn Sina is amazing, SubhanAllah, scholar. He's got a lot of poems in medicine and in philosophy and the nafs and other things. He mentions this in his books a lot, SubhanAllah. Of course, this ruling, like I said, is a general ruling. Yes, and it doesn't apply to everyone at the same time, but it's generally practical and it is correct. So for most people, they don't need to eat more than twice a day or even twice in 24 hours. And subhanAllah, a lot of people, they try this and they schedule their life around this, they become a lot more functional in life. The culture we have today in modern life is incorrect and does not match any person who is serious about life, where every few hours is a break. So you have morning tea, your breakfast, then morning tea, and then there's afternoon snack, and then there's lunch, and then there's before bedtime there's a snack, and there's in the offices we have coffee and food and snacks everywhere. Every workplace has to have snacks and things and food, and everything has to be involved in just always sipping at something and chewing on something. SubhanAllah. Whether you meet your calorie intake or not, but the idea is that you're always moving your mouth. You'll always have something. Even if you're not eating, you're chewing gum. I mean, your mouth has to be moving just to mimic eating, because subhanAllah, you feel like you're eating that way. Or drinking diet drinks that don't have any calories just so you feel like you're always full. You're just filling yourself with something. The idea is that you don't fill yourself. You don't always just take and drink. It should be done at specific times, and the rest of the time you should be focusing on other things. That's the general advice that people have found more beneficial for others. And subhanAllah, fasting in Ramadan, we all know, has very good effects on people, subhanAllah. Why? Because of this. So we don't have to fast every single day. We should fast some days, so some days should have fasting. Other days, we should at least limit the windows of eating and then structure our life around that. No.
أحسن الله عليكم. قال رحمه الله تعالى: وفضلوا الجمع على الإفراد فيه لأجل كثرة الأيادي ولم يلقم بعضهم لبعض ولم يجل بصره بل يغضي. They prefer gathering around it to being alone because of the many hands. They do not feed each other by hand, and their eyes do not wander, but they are lowered.
No. They prefer eating in groups instead of eating alone, because the Prophet ﷺ mentioned this in many hadith, اجتمعوا على الطعام, to gather upon food. Now, another thing people make mistakes in is what? We gather upon the wrong thing. So we gather just after food, we gather to chat after we're all full and we've fulfilled our desires. We gather to chat after our desires are filled. What's going to happen? Your desires are going to reflect on you talking about nonsense, because you've just eaten. You're going to wish, and your nafs is going to drag you towards talking, because your nafs is full now. You're not spiritual anymore. You're busy with other things. You're going to be very surface level engaged in things. You're going to be just talking about nonsense. So what do? After we're eating, everyone eats individually. We come together and we start to chat and waste time, and maybe backbite and other things as well. Most people do this, subhanAllah, yes? Everyone eats their own individual meal, and then we get together and then we chat. That's not what we want to achieve. We want people to eat in an organized way where there's barakah on the food. So everyone comes with their barakah, and it comes on the food. And then Allah Ta'ala puts barakah in the food to the extent that the same food that would be enough for one person is enough for two. For two people is enough for three. And we take from this every single time we eat. So we're eating together as much as we can, and by eating together means we're sharing our food with others. So if you have food, you bought food for yourself, someone else is there, you invite them both to come and have a meal with you. You both have food, invite a third person and make enough for them. Even if it's not a third person, why not mix your food together, bring your food together and eat together? A sunnah is to eat together, to offer. Why? Because there's a small level of charity that you're doing here. There's also a level of engagement, and also, subhanAllah, we are connecting. We're not just focusing on our needs, we're actually connecting. This is recommended in Islam. No. Of course, subhanAllah, Imam Junayd radiallahu anhu, even in this, he mentions you should choose the people that you invite to eat with. So Imam Junayd, it was mentioned that he mentions to his students, al-aklu murada'a, feeding, mu'akala, al-mu'akala murada'a. Eating together is like breastfeeding, subhanAllah. When you breastfeed, subhanAllah, you inherit things from that person. Eating together is the same. So he said, فَانظُرْ مُومَنْ تُآكِلُونَ. So look and handpick the people you eat with together, because it will affect you. So choose good people and eat with them. If you're blessed to have someone who is on the same, subhanAllah, has the same goals as you in life, and they're trying to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at work or something, have lunch together every single day. That's beneficial. Now, of course, there's many ahadith about this. The sunnah is full of ahadith of them gathering to eat together. And then even Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam in the hadith, when he slaughtered the cows for his guests, for the angels, he put the food down on the table, so they're all sitting together. So that was the norm, that they would always sit together and eat. And that's why even at home, if we eat together, it's better to put the food on a large plate and eat together. Now,
قال رحمه الله تعالى: ولم يلقم بعضهم لبعض ولم يجل بصره بل يغضي. They do not feed each other by hand, and their eyes do not wander, but they are lowered.
One thing that is not recommended, generally, just that it's not considered to be from the adab, so what people might think that it is from the adab, is that you feed each other with hands. Everyone's putting food in the other person's mouth. In some cultures they do that, okay? This is not generally recommended, okay? Why? They say because it has an element of disrespect in it. It has an element of qillat al-ihtisham, of not being, mannered. Where your hand might be dirty. You shouldn't touch someone else's food with your hand. You should eat together, but you shouldn't be putting your hand on something and then feeding it to another person. It's not adab, it's not manners, yes? That person might feel embarrassed to refuse, but they don't feel comfortable. We shouldn't be, eating together and being one and stuff doesn't mean that we have to be disgusting in some cultures, yeah? We have to do things that people might not be comfortable with. No, the adab is to do what is also considered to be respectful, socially respectful, and respect those norms and do things in a very respectful way, as if treat the person in front of you as if they are the highest, most respected person ever. Every person you sit with, imagine them to be in a very high rank where you would really look at your actions before you do them with them, and then treat them like that. Everyone you should do respect. That's why you don't feed people from the leftovers. You don't feed people food that you wouldn't eat. We mentioned that before. In Riyadh al-Salihin, actually in last week's class in the masjid, we said that even when you're feeding in Islam, it's sunnah to feed people every day, to give food out, to give sadaqah and food. But we mentioned there's many hadith telling us that if you feed people the leftovers or the food that you don't want to eat, that Allah Ta'ala will punish you for that. Yes, that you can't do that. It's not respect. That's not being generous. And even if you have a lot of food, you don't give them. From the moment you cook the food, you should put good food aside to give it to the neighbors. But you don't eat whatever you want, all the good food, and then you give the leftovers to your neighbors. Yes? We said the sunnah in giving what you said leftovers is that you intentionally cook extra good food to give it to people. That's the sunnah, yes? But don't eat all the good food yourself, and then whatever is leftovers, you consider yourself to be giving charity by just throwing the rubbish to people. That's not how we respect people. Anyone, every being we feed, we should feed them in a respectful way. Even with animals, you feed them food that fits their state. So if an animal wouldn't eat that food, you don't give it to them. If an animal enjoys that food and respects it, then you could give it to them. And that's how we have to be. Now, Imam Sulami radhiallahu anhu, he also mentioned this in I think in Tabaqat Sufiyah. He says, وَكَرِهَ أَكْثَرُهُمْ تَلْقِيمُ مَنْ يَخْدِمُهُمْ مِمَّا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيهِمْ. He said most of the Sufiyah used to hate for a person to put food in their hand and then feed it to someone else, especially the people who serve them. Sometimes, subhanAllah, it might be they have a gathering and then there's people who are dedicated to feeding others. You don't just get the food and feed it to them like that, subhanAllah. They should sit down and they should be eating just like others. Okay, he says, لَا سِيمَا إِذَا كَانَ ضَعِيفًا, especially if the person is weak or seen to be compromised or in a vulnerable situation. Be even more careful not to do so. نعم. فإنه لا يجوز له التصرف فيما قدم إليه. قال بعضهم يملكه بالإحضار بين يديه، وقال بعضهم بالتناول، وقال بعضهم بالوضع في الفم، وقال بعضهم باستيفاء الأكل. نعم. وقال الجنيد تتنزل الرحمة على الفقراء عند الطعام فإنهم لا يأكلون إلا بالإيثار. He says, so you should sit them down. And how do you allow someone when they're sitting down to eat from the food if you're the owner of the food? Most scholars say that just by allowing them to sit down and offering them, that means that they own that food and they're allowed to eat from that food. And then, subhanAllah, Imam Junaid says, when the fuqara, the people of tasawwuf, when they eat together, Allah Ta'ala sends lots of different mercies upon them. Lots of different mercies upon them when they're eating. And the reason that these rahmahs come down is that because everyone wants to feed the other person. Everyone wants to give up their food and offer it to the other person. They don't eat, they're not looking at the food in front of them and saying, oh, I wish I had that. The person next to you has a nice piece of meat, so your eyes are on that. You shouldn't be like that. Everything that is nice, you wish to give it to the other person next to you. That's how they eat. And because they have that mentality, there's no bad energy that enters into the food. No.
الله عليكم. قال رحمه الله تعالى: ولم يروا فيه بالانتظار فيذهب الوقت بلا تذكار وكره البطنة للإخوان فالبطن كالوعاء للشيطان. It is not their point of view to wait for anyone so that time passes without dhikr. They dislike the full belly for the brothers because the stomach is like a container for shaitan.
ولم يروا فيه بالانتظار فيذهب الوقت بلا تذكار. One thing and one illness we have in a lot of communities is that when food is there, we wait and wait and wait till the last person attends. And the food goes cold. And the food isn't good anymore. And then we all eat because one person decided to take their time and come late. Okay? In food, the recommended advice is that people respect the invitation. And if multiple people are invited, even if one comes, they should be offered the food when it's time for food. So that one person is respected. Because in that case, we'll be holding them back. They might be hungry. They might need the food. Okay? And waiting for food is a situation when people are not going to want to be doing dhikr and other things. They're going to be thinking about food. So you're just going to be wasting time. So in that case, subhanAllah, we should have the food served when it's time for food. And people should respect that. Respect invitations for food highly. There's a story that two da'is or shuyukh, they went to visit a person in, I think in America, from an Arab country. They went to visit America, and this person, he invited them for a meal, for dinner. And he said to them, you must come on time. I'm not running by Arab time, I'm running by Muslim time. And they came very late, subhanAllah. So what he did is that he had the whole entire table ready of food, and he ate himself, and he went to sleep after that, subhanAllah. When they came, the door was open, and they were told, please come, the food has been served, eat, but the host is sleeping. Eat as much as you want, subhanAllah. Very strict on time. And the same way is to shuyukh are strict in classes. When they feed people knowledge, feed people food, things that are offered by others should be respected highly, especially when it's an invitation. So this is generally something they're very strict on in the time of food. No. وكره البطنة للإخوان فالبطن للوعاء للشيطان. One thing they disliked a lot is for a person's stomach to always be full. To be, when your stomach is popping out because it's full of food. I mean that, subhanAllah, it would usually not be popping out, but because you ate so much, it's showing. It changes size because of food. Okay? It's called bitna. And the Arabs always say, bitna tuthib al-fitna. Yes, that having a stomach that's bulging out removes or affects your clarity, affects your sharpness in life. SubhanAllah. So a person should never, ever, no matter what happens, what you eat, never be in a state where your stomach is pressured, where it's, SubhanAllah, you're in pain because how full it is. To the extent that all the blood in your body is rushing towards your stomach. That's extremely disliked, yes? It says, وَكَارِهُ الْبِطْنَةَ لِلْإِخْوَانِ that they hate it and discourage for their brothers. They wouldn't want this for themselves, nor for other people. They were very keen on no one being in a state where you're uncomfortably full. No? And of course, there's an athar that Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab would say, إِيَّاكُمُ الْبِطْنَةِ be aware from bitna, be aware from being bloated. SubhanAllah. And there's the famous hadith where the Prophet says that the shaitan, he acts and he goes throughout your body based on the bloodstream in your body. When the blood is all gone from your brain and going around your stomach, shaitan's going to be hanging around there as well. No. فالبطن كالوعاء للشيطان. He says, so the stomach is like an open vessel for the shaitan to settle in. This is from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. He says, إن الشيطان يجري من ابن آدم مجرى الدم فضيقوا مسالكه بالجوع. Shaitan goes around the body of the son of Adam just like blood circulates around you. So if you want to close off the gates of shaitan, do it by putting yourself in a state of hunger and starvation. Shaitan will have limited access to you, like we are in Ramadan. No. Imam Junaid, he is also, Imam Junaid, he's one of the scholars who actually speaks a lot about food, subhanAllah, in his teachings. A lot. More than others, subhanAllah. More than others, Imam Junaid always speaks about food in his books. He says, يجعل أحدكم بينه وبين الله مخلاة من طعام يريد أن يحصل حلاوة النجاة. أن يحصل حلاوة النجاة. He says, one of you, a person, individual, between them and Allah Ta'ala is always food. There's always a pot of food in front of them. And that's all they care about. And then they question, why can't I feel connection with Allah Ta'ala? Why don't I feel the ibadah? Why don't I feel my ibadah when I'm close to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala? Why don't I feel that? It's because, subhanAllah, between you and Allah Ta'ala is a pot of food. Which is very sad, really, subhanAllah.
أحسن الله إليكم. قال رحمه الله تعالى وأمروا فيه بفتح الباب وأكلوا بالقصد والآداب وفتحوا الباب لكل ساري وأكلوا بالرفق والإيثار. They've ordered the doors to be opened and they eat with intention and courtesy. They open the doors to everyone in need and they eat gently and with preference.
This is the last two lines in this chapter, and then we'll finish the adab of eating. And we'll stop for Maghrib, inshallah ta'ala. Last thing says, وَأَمَرُوا فِيهِ بِفَتْحِ الْبَابِ. Basically, food used to be served in the takaya and the zawaya, in the gatherings, served for everyone. So they would prepare enough food for lots of people to come. And then they would open the door so anyone could come, and it was a known thing. The scholars would say that the doors should always be open when it's time to eat, whether it's your house door, the zawiyah door, whatever it is, and they should be closed when it's private gatherings time. Yes? So in private gatherings of dhikr and stuff, the doors should be closed. Why? Because we're focused on a certain goal that we want to achieve. And also, other people might not understand that, might not be interested, might come and bother us, might come with all different needs of the dunya, might come and question so many things. So you don't open the doors in private gatherings and in things that need focus when you're focused on a goal, but you open the doors when you're eating. Again, people, what do they do when they're eating? Close the doors. We only invite special. We want to have all the food for ourselves, all the nice food, and we don't want to have that taken away from us. No, we should open and invite and really make the idea of feeding a very casual thing. But then when we're doing dhikr and we're focused and stuff, we should close the doors. Yes, it should only be people who are serious, because other people would affect our focus. نعم. وأكلوا بالقسط والآداب. And then when they eat gently. They eat, they don't just jump on the food and devour it in 1 minute. They eat gently. Okay? والآداب. And they follow all of the manners of food. وفتحوا الباب لكل ساري وأكلوا بالرفق والأذى. And they opened the door for everyone passing by. Passing by, Bismillah, please come in. Bismillah, okay? وأكلوا بالرفق والإفارة. And they eat with gentleness and offering their food to other people. نعم. Inshallah ta'ala, we will stop at this line of poetry, inshallah ta'ala. And this is the end of the I don't know what chapter this is. This is the end of the fourth chapter of this book, inshallah ta'ala. Next chapter will be about adab al-zahiri wal-batin. About adab al-zahir and batin. That the tariq has inner and outer adab that need to be focused on and need attention to be paid to, inshallah ta'ala. And adab al-zahir al-batin is where we talk about maqamat and ahwal, states that we reach. Most of the adab of tasawwuf is about adab al-zahir al-batin. Next chapter is the most important chapter when it comes into the aspects you need to pay attention to learn to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The most important one is the next chapter, inshallah ta'ala. So hopefully in the next class we will take them, inshallah ta'ala.